I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. Hello, everybody. So how are we doing today? So Trump actually wants Mexico to start taking in the bulk of migrants from South America. It's a program called the Stay in Mexico program, and it's actually taken in quite a few people already. But this is the largest border crisis we've had in a long time. And some facts in the past suggest that this border crisis was engineered to some extent by individuals, globalists primarily, trying to get migrants into America. Or so a few conspiracy theories would suggest. There is evidence that there has been some sort of similar to the situation with the migration crisis in Europe. They're telling migrants that Europe is like this paradise they can go to where they don't have to worry about their stuff, and really, their economy's not that great. Well, basically, it's similar to that. The thing about conspiracy theories is that there's always a small kernel of truth to it. Basically, a conspiracy theory is making a mountain out of a molehill. Right? There is a problem, but conspiracy theorists blow it out of proportion and make it a bigger deal than it really is. That's part of its anatomy. But there are those who are telling migrants to come to the United States, deliberately telling them, and that they're telling them that it's some sort of, make it sound paradisic. They're telling them, oh, there's jobs there, and there's not jobs here. They're getting their hopes up. Why they do this, I have no idea. Why these NGOs do this. Profit, maybe? But, President Donald Trump last week said he will impose a blanket tariff on Mexican imports from June 10th to try to pressure Mexico to tackle large flows of mostly Central American migrants passing through en route to the United States. The threat roiled global markets, which are already suffering from a trade war between the United States and China. The price of oil fell on Monday as U.S. trade disputes with the two countries deepened concerns about weakening global crude demand. Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said the country is committed to continuing to work to keep illegal immigrants from Central America from reaching the U.S. border. However, he said a more radical proposal favored by some U.S. officials to designate Mexico a safe third world country, a safe third country, which would force Central Americans seeking asylum in the United States to instead apply for it in Mexico, is not an option. An agreement about the safe third country would not be acceptable for Mexico, Ebrard told reporters in Washington. They have not yet proposed it to me, but it would not be acceptable, and they know it. Ebrard will meet U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo during the talks, which will also involve other senior officials. The negotiations in Washington will be closely watched by financial markets concerned that import tariffs would ultimately hit the U.S. economy by adding to the cost of a wide range of goods in the United States, from Mexican-made cars and auto parts to televisions, beer, and food. Well, I know Mexico made beer. I guess they make the food. I always thought we just sort of ripped off their food ideas and made it ourselves. Guess I was wrong. Auto parts, that one really took me by surprise. But then again, I guess I do sometimes see made in Mexico on stuff sometimes. But I don't see it much. Here's something that's sort of amusing about this situation. Chipotle, the U.S.-based Mexican-themed fast food chain, estimated a $15 million hit from the proposed tariffs, but said that they could cover that by raising its burrito prices by around 5 cents, which is not a huge impact on customers. 5 cents, I wouldn't worry about that. But in a possible sign of U.S. priorities in the talks, which are due to run through at last Wednesday, Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan said on Sunday that Mexico should deploy more personnel to stop illegal immigrants along a remote, jungly stretch of border with Guatemala. Michelinen also said Mexico should bolster its own immigration screenings along that border, crack down on criminal networks transporting migrants, and enable more migrants to wait in Mexico while they apply for asylum in the United States. Since January, the government of President, I love this name, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has ramped up detentions and deportations, but that has not been enough to stop the growing tide of families reaching the United States, mainly from Guatemala and Honduras, many of them trying to escape poverty and violent crime. Trump and fellow Republicans say something needs to be done to stem the biggest migrant surge on the border in a decade. U.S. officials say 80,000 people are being held in custody, and more than 100,000 mostly Central American migrants that are in April are overwhelming Border Patrol officials. Well, yeah, I mean, how many Border Patrol officials do you have versus 80,000 people in custody and more than 100 on the way? God, this is crazy. Like, I knew that they were pushing more people up to the border, but I did not expect this many. This is the biggest yet. 100,000 people. I understand that those South American countries are messed up, but if they think that we can afford to take care of this many people, boy, they've got another thing coming. I mean, we can barely take care of our own population half the time. Arguably, we shouldn't be taking care of them at all. They should be taking care of themselves. The role of government is simply to govern. That's how it should be, I think. But nonetheless, there's no way we're going to be able to take care of that many people. Right? As unpleasant as it is, this is reality. Live in it. But for now, 8,835 people have been sent into Mexico under the program commonly known as Remain in Mexico. Okay, I called it Stay in Mexico earlier. I guess I got that wrong. That's fine. But during a visit to Britain on Monday, Trump returned to the subject on Twitter. As a sign of good faith, Mexico should immediately stop the flow of people and drugs through their country and to our southern border. They can do it if they want. Mexican officials in Washington on Monday warned that the tariffs could backfire, fanning further migration by hammering regional economics. The Mexican economy, which is heavily reliant on exports to the United States, shrank in the first quarter and would reel under U.S. levies. That would start at 5%, but could reach as high as 25% this year under Trump's plan. Goldman Sachs economists gave a 70% chance of the tariffs on Mexican imports coming into effect at 5% on June 10th. As a proportion of Mexico's total U.S. exports in 2018, $347 billion according to U.S. data, a 5% tariff implies costs of roughly $1 billion between June 10th and 30th. Now see, the thing is, sanctions I'm not okay with. Modifying another country's economy is not okay. But imposing tariffs, that's very different. That's basically just taxing imported goods. That doesn't really doesn't hurt a country's economy directly unless they are dependent on exports to survive, like Mexico. In that case, I would think that tariffs should be reconsidered, because you could be essentially ruining Mexico's economy, which they've been doing better. They've been improving. They're almost a second world nation now. Almost. They actually import a lot of really gritty action movies, and there's even movies made here in the United States done in the style of Mexican action movies, mostly starring Danny Trejo, our version of Mexican action flicks. But yeah, Trump's also apparently promising high tariffs on all American goods if they Mexican goods, tariffs on Mexican goods if they don't consent to his plan. You know, Trump's really kind of a bully. He really is a kind of a bully. These sorts of strong-arm tactics, and he thinks these are going to work. No, they're going to backfire. No one likes a bully. But tariffs, along with the decision to cancel aid programs to the northern Central American countries, could have a counterproductive effect and would not reduce migration flows. This was a statement by Mexico's ambassador to the United States, Martha Barcena, told the news conference. Anyway, there you go. That's your news with the Mexico and border situation. Crazy, crazy, crazy.